Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have to actually race through this presentation. I have to catch a 12 o'clock flight in Durban. I'm going to share with you some of the preliminary results from the work that I'm doing in Laagebaan Lagoon. I work with gillnet fisheries in this particular system. Before I go ahead, I think I just want to put you into a picture as to where this area is in the bigger scheme of marine protected areas in South Africa. This is the Laagebaan Lagoon system. It consists of a number of protected areas. I think you've got some bird islands on the other side, and then there's a 16-mile beach on the other side of things. But my focus will be in this particular area. Just to give you a brief context in terms of the management regime within the Laagebaan Lagoon system, you've got three areas, or the zonation that we have for the management. It's subdivided into three areas, which is Zone A, Zone B, and then this is Zone C. Zone A is an area where all activities are allowed to happen, but there isn't really any kind of zonation as to what happens where within Zone A, per se, because there's quite a number of different resource user groups. You've got your the boat guys, which are catching fish using line. You've got the kite surfers. You've got the net fishermen. So in some way, there is some conflict in terms of the use area. And then in Zone B is what you call restricted area B2. I think someone did give some explanation. We've got two types of restricted area. It's B1, which there's no activities that are allowed, and then in particular consumptive activities. And then B2 is where you will have some extractive activities allowed, but maybe for one particular species. And in this particular case, it is gillnet fisheries. There's, I think, 3 permit holders that are allowed to fish in this particular area. The rest of the right holders can only fish within Zone A. Taking you a little bit step back, the primary objective for declaring this Laagebaan Lagoon system a protected area was to safeguard the habitat for migrant waders in particular, and maybe to add to that, it is also regarded as an important bird area for these migrant waders. And subsequent to that, that is what the zonation is based on, because if you look into this screen, this tells you this is the salt marshes, and the salt marshes was used as a kind of a proxy for the habitat of these particular species. And then Zone B was regarded as a kind of a buffer area between this sanctuary and the area where there's more extensive use. And then the secondary objective, there's been some research done by the guys from UCT, Colin Hardwood, and with some guys from DAF, Svein Kerwot. They were looking at the movements of fish, in particular the white stump nose. And then recently, I think Charlene da Silva has been looking at the movements of sharks, which has shown that the Zone B in some way does provide protection for these particular species. But the question that I ask is, what about the livelihoods of the fishermen? Because we know that these guys have been fishing throughout the system for many years, and I think the system has been relatively healthy, per se. And my particular research is to try and look at these particular conservation objectives and then to try and overlay those with the livelihoods. That means looking at where the fishermen are fishing and where the fish is in terms of the target species in relation to bycatch when we talk about the safeguarding of the threatened species. Basically, just to give you an overview of what gill net fishing is about, for those of you that are not familiar with the concept of gill net fishing, these guys will put the net out and the fish will swim through, they will get hooked in that particular net. And then in terms of the mesh size, it's between 48 and 64 millimeter, and then it cannot exceed 5 meters. Previous studies that have been done, they've shown that the bycatch proportion is about 5%, which is something that is acceptable because in the southern coast and the eastern side of South Africa, gill net has been banned because bycatch proportion are substantially high. In terms of the methods that I've used to collect the data, I use what I call confidential catch reporting system because DAF does have a catch return system, but for some reason I do believe that the information that is submitted, it's not a true reflection of what the guys are catching. So I've established a confidential catch reporting system whereby I've got a monitor based in Laagebaan. He's from the community, and in terms of confidentiality, I assure the guys that their names will not be revealed to anyone. The information that they collect is the effort, crude effort, the catch composition, the catch, and then also the areas where they catch the fish. And I look at mostly the 2/3 of the fish because with the gill net fishing, they change spots where they fish. And then also the area where the bycatch was caught, and then the number of seals encountered. And then I also have another component of data collection, which is an in situ onboard observation. I go out with the guys, and I've got a GPS with me. I GPS all the fishing position, and then I record the start and the end fishing time. I record the catches, the catch composition, and I measure and weigh the fish. And this normally takes me about 4 to 5 days a week. And when I started, I used to randomize the week that I will go out. But I soon realized that the first week and the last week of the month were not ideal because the guys had some other activities that we're busy with. And also the weather effect as well that came in. So I tried to go during the second and the third week. I started this onboard observation in July 2010. What I also did is to try and look at the economics of the fishery, looking at the performance of the fishery. Are they making money? And then the other aspect that I want to look at is the value chain, but I haven't done it yet. I will have interviews with the buyers because normally the fishermen, they will sell the fish to someone, and that particular person, in a way, will distribute it in a particular way, which is not always the same. So I want to follow that trend as to how far the fish is going and who is benefiting from that. These are some of the results. This is the distribution of the target species, which is the mallets. We refer to them as harders. It's Lisa richardsoni. You can see most of the fishing, as you can see, is in shallow areas. Where you see this dark blue area, it's telling you that those are the shallow areas, and where you see the light blue, those are relatively deep areas. So the fishery is mostly confined to shallow areas. And some of these areas, you will find there's some seagrass there, or bamboo. That's what the guys are referring to. In terms of the non-target species, that is the bycatch composition, most of the bycatch is the elf and the white stump nose, which in combination, they constitute about 70% of the bycatch. You must just look at the numbers as well. In relation to the total catch, this is just less than 1% of the catch. When I look at the spatial distribution of the bycatch species, I try to look at the species that are of concern. In this instance is the blacktail. Blacktail, you can see there isn't actually much of a bycatch for the blacktail. And I would imagine it's probably because this species is associated with some rocky habitat in most of the time. So it's only on those few occasions that it gets caught on the net, because the nets operate mainly on the shallow sandy areas. When we look at the spatial distribution of the elf bycatch, it tends to be widely distributed, but to some extent it is within Zone B, which is a restricted area per se. When we look at the bycatch for the white stump nose, the white stump nose as well tends to be relatively widely distributed, but most of the catches are within Zone A. Something that I haven't managed to do at the moment, some of the guys, they do fish in this particular area, but I haven't had a trip where they will take me to that particular area. This is a military area. They're not allowed to fish there, but I know when I get the catch returns, most of the white stump nose bycatch is coming from that particular area. When I look at the shark bycatch, also this is not very common. I think, as you can see, on very few occasions that we do get bycatch for the shark species, and mainly the shark species in this instance is the smooth hound. When I look at the size distribution or the mean size for the non-target species, there isn't any for the horse mackerel. For elf, I think most of the elf that is caught is within the size limit. For corp as well, it's within the size limit, the blacktail. It's only for the white stump nose that it's slightly below the size limit. And if I can explain that particular instant, there was an incident, I think it was late summer, February last year, where I think in 2 different trips we caught quite a large number of small white stump nose. I think in one net we caught close to 200 small white stump nose. Okay. And then what I also did is to look at the local index of collocation. That means to try and see if the areas where the guys catch the hardest, is it the same areas where the bycatch species is. So in essence, if the value is close to 0, it tells you that there's relatively no real overlap in the distribution between the target species and the non-target species. And as you can see from these figures, I think the level of overlap is quite negligible because it's quite low. I looked at the GLM results in terms of the catches. You can see that if you fish during the day, you're likely to catch less fish, and that was statistically significant. And then when we look at the areas, Zone A and Zone B, if you catch fish in Zone B, you're likely to catch less fish, whereas if you fish in Zone B, you're likely to catch more fish. This was, however, not statistically significant. And if I may try and explain one of the reasons for this, when I started to collect the data from the guys wouldn't really tell me exactly where they caught the fish, because there wasn't that level of trust where they would declare the exact location of their catches. So most of the data that I've gathered, I think from July 2010 up to the end of 2010, in some way is not reliable. The guys started to have some trust levels when I started to work in 2011, and I think when I do the analysis again, I will remove the data from 2010 and see if that makes a difference or not. When, in terms of the observer presence, when there was an observer on board, the catch was substantially less than I'm not on board. And the probable explanation for this is that in some cases, the guys do not really take me to the areas where they normally fish when I'm not on board. And then for the bycatch, in instances where the guys have a bycatch species, it's likely that they will catch more fish. That's what this is telling us. And also in terms of the month, I've put these in a graph format. The month of April had a positive effect, and then the month of December had a negative effect. For the month of December, one of the challenges that we've seen is that there's quite a substantial low effort in December. And then it's not really clear whether the guys, they just go out having fun, or is it because of the conflict with the other resource users, because the lagoon gets congested with boats during that period of time. Okay, I think I'm almost down. And then also in relation to wind, the southerly winds had a negative effect, and the northeast, southeast, and the northwest has a positive effect on the catches. I look at the demographic profile of the guys. It looked like most of them, in particular the commercial guys, the pensioners, and then in terms of the education level, the grades, it's between 7 and 8. The household number, it's about 3 and 4. And then the experience, it shows that many of these guys, they've been involved in the fishery for quite a long time. In terms of the economic performance of the fishery, what I've done, I look at the capital cost, what on average, these are average values that I've put in here, what it would cost for the guy to have your boat, your net, and your engine. And then I also look at the operational cost, because some of the guys do not have boats, so they're hiring the boats, and also the hiring guys to help them backmate, that's what they call, and then the cost for the petrol, for the food, and the net fixing. On average, in terms of operation, they're spending about 20,000, the commercial guys, and the interim guys about 40,000. I think it's a reflection that many of the interim guys do not really own the boats, so they have to pay the owners of the boat. When we look on the average number of trips that they made, the commercial guys are making more trips, about 82, and then the interim guys are making about 54. And one of the reasons for this is that the interim guys, they're changing. There's about 3 permits, I think, for 7 people. So you will fish today, and then someone else will fish tomorrow. This is the cost. The guys, they're selling the fish either per 100 or they're selling them in packets of 5. So I've estimated the value of the catch based on those bases. In summary, I think what is coming out of this study is that most of the fishing is happening in the shallow areas, like I've showed, which happen to be in Zone B and C, which are the restricted areas. And I think to some extent, this is an indication that the current zonation is not compatible with the gillnet fisheries, because most of the guys are only allowed to fish in Zone A. Like I said, elf and white stump nose dominate the bycatch species. Like I said, however, this is quite a small proportion because it's about less than 1%. The level of spatial collocation is negligible. There is, like I've said, a high proportion of bycatch for early recruits white stump nose in summer, which is a potential for closed season or a temporal closed area. What I intend to do, because we observed this, I think around February last year, I intend to go and stay in Laagebaan, whether it's going to be a month or 2, to try and follow the pattern of these recruits in terms of how much time do they spend within the system and where do they spend that time. And I will look at the option, like I said, either closed areas or closed season. The fishery is largely constituted of pensioners, in particular commercial guys. In terms of the revenue, it generates about 200,000 to about $1 million and 40% of this is distributed among different service providers. Service providers, I mean the bucket mates that they have to pay. It's not going directly to the guy with the right. So in some way, this particular fishery is playing some crucial role in the local economy. I think that's about it.
Thank you, Mbulelo. We have time for one question. Bruce, you could have your chance to tell. There's a mic.
Thank you, Mbulelo. Two little questions. One on the bycatch. I would guess that there are a lot of cormorants in that area that would be feeding on the mullet. Do you have any bycatch of birds in the gill nets? That's one. And then the second one is more an overview type question: is the future of this fishery? I mean, from a nature conservation point of view. This is not something that I think most of us sitting here in the audience is something that we support. I think the evidence is strong that we shouldn't have gill netting in these kind of areas that are functioning as important nursery areas, and a kind of feeling from you as to whether this fishery should be allowed to continue or whether it should be stopped.
Okay, I'm going to start with the first one. Cormorant, yes. Bycatch, no. We see a lot of white-breasted cormorant that are interacting with the nets, but I think they're so intelligent, the birds. They just dive, they take the fish out of the net, and then off they go. And I think it's one of the issues that we need to be looking at. I haven't quantified the exact numbers, but the fishermen, one of the reasons they don't fish during the day most of the time is to try and avoid the cormorant, because one cormorant will take about 5 to 6 fish out of your net. And in many cases, you will get about 20 to 50 cormorants in one net. And then coming to your second question about the future of the fishery, I think I'm going to first reference to the work that Steve and Ken has done. I think it has shown that the bycatch proportion in the West Coast is relatively low. And then given the fact that this is a traditional practice in a way, besides the fact that it's a commercial practice, and from the results that I have at the moment, which shows the proportion of the bycatch is quite low, per se, because if you were to compare the amount of fish that is taken out by the anglers in that particular system, I think it's nothing of any comparison.
Okay, thank you.